Hello, my name is Destiny Molas, and in this presentation we'll be diving into the really interesting topic of freedom of speech, especially as it plays a role within education. And I just want to reach out to you to let you know that if you're watching this and you're saying, of course I know my constitutional rights, why am I listening to this video? You may not be aware of how this changes and adapts in and out of the classroom as you pursue a career in education. Before we dive into the meaty part of this presentation, I just want to make you aware of a statistic that was found in the U.S. 2015 Census Bureau that stated that the United States is actually the #1 ranking country when it comes to legal protection regarding freedom of speech, and this is huge, especially as we dive into and focus on a particular case within this presentation. This begs the question, if this is true and the statistic is available, then why is it continuously being a controversial issue, especially in numerous court cases regarding teachers and students in education? And we'll dive a little more into that as we proceed in the presentation. I chose to highlight a specific case entitled Silver versus Cheektawago in 2016. And in this case, a high school biology teacher was actually asked to remove all of her religious materials from her classroom because it interfered with the education of her students. And the school district gave this to her in a counseling letter, which asked her to not only remove this, but stop teaching her religious instruction within the class. And although the school was trying to create a secular environment for their students, the teacher argued that she could not practice her religious affiliations and that she did not feel comfortable, and that ultimately her constitutional and legal rights were being violated by the school. And this comes into play as we pay more attention to the First Amendment, because usually in these types of cases, the plaintiff claims that their First Amendment rights have been violated, and she does this as well. And as we go into this, it not only protects freedom of religion, but also the freedom of speech, which they're almost interchangeable within this case study. Her next legal claim that she makes against the defendant is the violation of the Establishment Clause in that same amendment. And basically, it states the same legal rights, except that it not only talks about her religious rights, but how she has rights to practice and exercise these religious rights. And that comes into play as we go further into this. Her last claim, and arguably the most interesting, is the violation of Equal Protection Clause under the 14th Amendment. And this basically goes into the separation of church versus state in public education. And this plays a huge role, because where do you draw the line of where a person's freedom of speech violates the rights of students? Although this teacher has academic freedom within her own classroom, if I was litigating this case, I would not agree with the claims that she was making, particularly because she did not try to have a secular classroom. Her use of religious affiliation did not help her educate students regarding biology, and that it was just not appropriate in this particular case. Interestingly enough, the court also agreed with my conclusion about this case. The court found that basically she was exercising her religious affiliations and her religious views in a way that hindered the quality of education that the students were receiving. And this is where your rights are not protected within the classroom as they would be outside of the classroom. And due to these legal reasonings, the case was actually dismissed, and all of the claims that the plaintiff made were deemed unqualified and inaccurate. And this happens in most of the cases, because although you might have these rights and be able to say things outside of the classroom, you may not have the same rights inside of the classroom. So if you're watching this and you don't understand how this applies to you, if you are pursuing a career in education, it's important to not only know your rights as a U.S. citizen, but know how and when these protections apply to you and when they do not in particular situations. So this plays a huge role in not only this court case, but as you pursue an occupation. Thank you for your time.